evening. I am Tigner Brand, not Munson Steed, and this is A Seat at the Table. It took 8 minutes and 46 seconds to shock the collective American conscious out of quarantine and into action. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Technology capturing the death of George Floyd, transmitting it around the world. That same 8 minutes and 46 seconds launched protests from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C., to London, New Zealand, Berlin, and beyond. It also prompted someone to write an op-ed talking about America's digitally powered racial awakening. Today, joining on the seat of the table is Ms. Kim Keenan. She is the co-chairman of the Internet Innovation Alliance and also the author who wrote the op-ed, which is now currently online at rollingout.com, America's Digitally Powered Racial Awakening. Welcome to A Seat at the Table. How are you doing this evening, Kim?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love how you read that. I feel like I'm at the live poetry slam and you're putting the flavor on it. I love it. That's exactly how I felt it.
That's outstanding. So tell me, what was the tipping point for you to write this op-ed? What, besides the 8 minutes and 45 seconds, we all saw it, besides the things that we have not seen before, but we know that has been transpiring in society, but what else was the tipping point that said you had to write this op-ed piece?
You know, I think for people who have been working in the movement and people who care about civil rights, like you said, we knew. We knew what was happening, but you know, I mean, let's face it, we live in a show me world. And to have it be so, you know, more vivid, you know how they always say, you know, truth is stranger than fiction, and you know, to have it, you know, broadcast to us this way, it really made me feel like I have to say something, and I had to say something because the history of it was all sort of hitting me at the same time. I was thinking about, you know, really, you know, John Lewis and those guys crossing that Edmund Pettus Bridge. And the only reason we really saw what happened is because the television cameras were there, right? If somebody just told you that story and it was passed on, you know, you would believe it, you'd be sharing it, but you couldn't make it viral.
Nor the things that we saw of John Lewis being hit in the head, the dogs, the water hose. Nothing would have had the same impact if someone just told the story versus seeing the story.
And that's the key, you know, it's one thing to tell a story. It's one thing to know that the story happened. It's one thing to know that this is a part of our history. It's another thing to see it broadcast in live time and to see, you know, the disconnection of the officer, to see him, you know, literally gasping with every breath. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And I think, you know, against this whole narrative, this notion that he's not struggling. He doesn't have a weapon. You know, all the things that, you know, somebody would say, oh, well, you know, he was wanted.
He was resisting.
Oh, he was resisting. And oh, he didn't follow instructions. And oh, you know, it's always this litany of sort of, you know, blaming a victim in this circumstance. And I think, you know, it really just struck me. And I think that more than anything, I wanted to help people to remember that this is a continuum, right? This wasn't something that, you know, was some unusual thing that happened out in this one place. This is something that had been happening, and that if we had not been able to capture it on film, a lot of people wouldn't have believed. I mean, it would have been hard to believe. I think even as a Black person, who's going to be foolish enough to sit this long with their knee? You know what I'm saying? Who's going to be this, you know, outrageous enough, this bold enough to do this? But what it also made me realize, and you know, I feel so strongly that every American needs access to broadband. And you think about how in this particular time, you know, we got all these kids at home, you know, and what people don't realize is coast to coast, urban to rural, you know, we've got kids who don't have access to any of this, right?
That's true. You bring
Not
up
just
a
in
good
some
point.
places, right?
The organization that you work for, the Internet Innovation Alliance, that's part of your mantra, broadband broad-based broad-based technology for all people, race, creed, color, geography, income.
Right.
No matter what it is, we need to have broadband. So what are some of the things you all are doing to try to implement this into our society?
So we really need to make sure that this is a policy, right? This is something that isn't just, we want to help these 5 people over here, or we want to help this community center. I mean, this is a policy that should impact every American, because in order to be a part of, whether it's your digitally powered revolution or whether it's the education of the future. I used to have this analogy that I used all the time. I would say, whenever somebody wanted something bad to happen to you in the science fiction movies, right? They always sent you to the dark planet, right? Star Wars, Star Trek. Whenever you want something really bad to happen to someone, what do? You send them to the dark planet. What happens on the dark planet? There's no technology. You can't beam up Scotty from the dark planet. And so it's really important that as a country, we have programs that we make Lifeline really a lifeline for families, so that they can have technology, that they can have this broadband in their homes, because, you can't do your homework anymore. I have a 5-year-old nephew in Buffalo, and, if you don't have a tablet and sometimes a desktop, and you don't have this access, you're missing out. And we forget that we have this George Floyd moment, right? Not because the television cameras caught it, but because a teenager with a cell phone had the presence of mind to pull it out and hold it steady. I mean, you think about that film. It wasn't some shaky, it wasn't the Blair Witch Project. It was clear. It was, you can broadcast it in 5G. And it's because she had the presence of mind to pull out her phone and say, okay, this is wrong. This is wrong, and we need to make sure that everyone has access to it. And here we are today. It was literally beamed from that moment in that city to the world, and people all over the world. I think what I'm most struck by, also, you talk about what made me want to write this, is that people are protesting every day, and they're not the people you would expect to traditionally be out there, right? It's not just young Black people. It's older Black people. It's white people. It's middle-aged white people. It's Asian people. It's, young white teenagers. In order for it to be a movement, everybody has to really participate.
Yes.
And when you see people day after day, there's a commercial in Washington where this gentleman walks out of his house, and you know what? I can't tell you fluidly what he is. He could be Hispanic, he could have been Asian, he could be white, he could be Black. And he invited all the protesters, because it was late at night, to stay at his house. And you see them all cheering him. Yeah. And have you seen that commercial? It's so powerful, because he's like, stay safe out there. I'm here if you need me. And that you haven't really seen that story told before. And I think people, it's like we're in the pandemic. There's so many things that are going wrong that it becomes harder to see all the things that go right, and seeing that there are people who are prepared to reach out beyond themselves and connect with people, because they this moment of humanity is what really connects us. It's the humanity of this moment that connects us. It's not about, as much what color you are. What I find is that when people start talking about diversity and inclusion, what they mean is go figure it out among yourselves. Black people, brown people, people of color, go figure it out among yourselves in the corner. But it's not a problem that can be solved in that way. If we're going to be truly a democracy, and we're going to, give people a seat at the table and a voice, then it has to be all of us having that voice.
So true. We have joining us Mr. Munson Steed.
All right.
Taking the head of the table today.
I get both of you today.
Yes.
Oh, no, he's doing a great job. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. A little cold up here in Chicago today. So.
Well, you're in the Chi. What can you say? It's always a good place.
Yeah, it's definitely a good place. So broadband should be a right, like a civil right.
Yes, I think that the access to broadband has to be something that shouldn't be like, I don't know if you saw this story recently, but there are two little girls and they're sitting outside the Chipotle. And they're just two little cute sisters and they're sitting there. They got their tablets and they're working away. And people in the store are like, what is going on? I mean, they're literally sitting on the ground. But why are they sitting on the ground? They're doing their homework because the Chipotle has internet
Wi-Fi.
access and the Wi-Fi is on and they can sit there and get their homework done. Well, I mean, should these little girls be sitting on the ground doing their homework? What's wrong with that picture? What's wrong with that picture? Why can't we create policies that allow those two little girls to do their homework, not sitting on the ground, inside, and be constructed in a way that it's not just two little girls in the city in a Chipotle. This is two Native American boys and girls sitting on the reservation. This is two little boys and girls in rural America out in the farmland. This is American kids all over the country. People think that some of these problems are urban. Urban is code word for not us. But the truth is, this is a urban problem and a rural problem. It's a reservation problem. It's a big city problem. It's a little city problem. I mean, we really don't have cities that are sort of out of the woods, like in a good city. And actually, DC actually falls in that category. You're still talking about somewhere between 1 in 4, 1 in 6 kids who don't have access to internet. And if all kids are like those kids, then you have a situation where this teenager who pulls out her phone and films the George Floyd incident doesn't exist.
So what's the first step? How do we, to eradicate the lack of broadband, what are some of the first steps that you all are doing, or what should we do as a collective, as a community, to make that happen, or make it an legislation, if we can say?
Yeah, I think we need to ask for legislation. We need to ask for support for broadband. I mean, the policy infrastructure is there. We need to really be part of a robust conversation where we say, why isn't this on the list of really critical things that are needed during this time? We all know. I mean, how much more time have you spent on Zoom and Facebook Live and how much more time? Like, it's like infinite. Like, you can't remember when you were off, right? So,
they all Zoom together.
Huh?
They all Zoom together now.
They all Zoom. I mean, I'm Zoomed out some days. I think this is my 5th Zoom of the day, but we do need policies in Washington. I mean, this is something, this is not a partisan issue. This isn't them or us or red or blue. This is red, white, and blue, that we invest in the infrastructure to make sure that, rural students and rural people have the opportunity to have access. This is something where, when we're talking about how do we get ourselves back on our feet, the investment in broadband is an investment in people's jobs. I mean, how many people work from home now who never worked at home before, who got up every day, got dressed, got on the bus? So there's so many things that this impacts, but it keeps kind of getting put on the back burner. And I see it the most in some of my writings, my other writings. I talk a lot about this from the school kid person perspective, because, you really see it there, because if they don't get the lessons in real time, then pretty much they're behind. And again, the reason why it's the dark planet is because you don't get the light. You don't get the broadband beam. You don't get the access. And this is an access issue. And I think that it doesn't get the attention, right? It doesn't get the attention that other things get, but the impact is much higher than some other things that people are out there marching for. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the solutions, if you look at the article, I talk about, we start talking about the solutions to the George Floyd issue and the problems with police accountability. I mean, a lot of those solutions will have technological solutions, because just like we know about this situation through technology, there are other technological solutions that lead there. And a lot of them have a home in broadband. So it's not one of these issues that's kind of on the side or for them. You know, it used to be broadband was thought of as something for people with money, right? You got a lot of money, you got all this, you know, technology in your home. But we live in a time now where, you know, that is not the case anymore. Because, you know, I'd much rather have a job that I can do from Zoom. You know, I whine about Zoom, but I love the opportunity that I can, you know, dress from the waist up and look great on camera. And then, you know, I got my fuzzy Uggs on so that I'm so comfortable. I can't remember when I wore heels last time. So, you know, it's just so important that we not overlook the tools that we'll need to get to a world where we're beyond the things that we've seen from John Lewis's time until now.
Everything you say is great. I agree with you 100%, but I'm going to.
Is she coming to ride, TJ?
I don't know. You should come to Ride. We have Ride.
Is she coming to Ride? I mean,
what is Ride?
Ride is our annual conference. Ride stands for
Rolling Out Innovation
Digital Entertainment.
Have I been invited?
I don't know. You haven't been one of the speakers there. I mean, I just can't believe it.
I'll be looking for my invitation, Tigner. I'll be looking for that in the email after this. But I would love to come, and I hope that I can physically come. I'm hoping we won't be on little boxes.
I don't think anybody's physically coming anywhere these days.
Oh, okay. It's soon, so it's coming up.
Oh yeah.
So it's the 25th and 26th.
Of September.
Oh, it's really soon. Oh, okay. I was thinking that you were. Yeah, well, I would love to participate. I think it's a great opportunity.
Did she write any of these stories for us, TJ?
She did. That is part of.
Is this ours?
That's why I'm here.
This is.
I got that. I'm talking about another one. Did she write another one?
Not yet.
Oh, we're still waiting for one. Oh,
yeah.
okay. I just was there. The next one, I thought there was one this week.
Well, if you invite
I think
me.
the other thing about broadband is health disparities.
Yeah.
So you
absolutely.
think about education, obviously front and center, health disparities front and center, obviously language acquisition front and center. Clearly, for me, the health telemedicine.
Absolutely.
So key in broadband, and I think there are those companies that are dedicated to creating the Internet Essentials outreach and continuing to grow that. I think some carriers just don't even have a relationship established with our community.
Right.
You know, you've got a best in class in at least Comcast in their effort. And I'm not certain that there's even a name for the other carriers that literally have broadband and may not have a relationship with our community, may not literally have a branded outreach for their broadband program. So
AT&T has a program and they do a lot of outreach and they have a lot of partnerships.
Not enough, not with us. They don't. You know, if they're not.
Not with Rolling Out.
If they're not spending with Black media, and I don't know their name, that's a problem. That is a problem. Corey has a problem at that point.
Corey has a problem with that.
I was just mentioning my brother Corey, the diversity director. If I don't know the name of the program, you know, so.
Well, we'll have to get more information on that and talk to you because there are a lot of programs out there and a lot of people are working on this. Obviously, I absolutely concur that there's more that everyone can do, but I do, you know, and I know about Comcast Internet Essentials, but you know there are other companies like AT&T and I believe that Mobile Charter, you know, some more than others. Some
we want to know the names of
others.
their outreach so that we can make sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
Now, do you think that we should have this all should come through our government, or should this be through private sector to implement this broadband?
I think that it's going to require all of that. This is not a one-stop, everybody can't do everything. I think there are going to have to be some private-public partnerships. I also think that there are companies who are doing, cutting-edge programs to make a difference and really, get out there. Sometimes it takes longer to do things with a partner, but I do think government is definitely a place where, we could really see some real movement that people could really come back and say, wow, okay, we see that we have this, 5G infrastructure and it's going to make a difference. So I would love to come to your conference and talk about these issues, because I do think what I do know is that our communities need to be discussing these issues a lot more than we do, because just as he said, this isn't just civil rights. This isn't just, photographing and filming George Floyd. This isn't just, criminal justice and accountability. This is also telemedicine. I mean, in our communities where we really lag in terms of healthcare, being able to sit at a screen like this and show the doctor your arm or lean forward and see your face is huge. And, a lot of our community is not getting that opportunity. And I mean, imagine, if Grandma Ruby, that was my grandmother's name, didn't have to, do the whole production of leaving her house and going to the doctor, and could really do it online. And the doctor could say, oh no, you need to come now, right? Instead of those 4 trips you made where you didn't need to come now we know you need to call somebody and do it now. And that's going to play out all over America for people. I mean, there are places where there's just no one there. So it's not just one thing. It really turns out to be education. It turns out to be these issues around policing. It turns out to be these issues around education and health. And I really think we could go on and come up with different areas tonight, but I think the big ones are health and education. So it really is not just some tangential thing. And I think that the really great solutions will be based in some sort of technological manner. And again, like I said, when I thought about John Lewis and I thought about him crossing that bridge, and I saw those huge television cameras on TV, it was probably the first time I'd ever even seen anything like that on television. And the ability of broadband to literally, and I use the word inject that into your conscience, to see it over and over again, to see it on demand, to see the images from around the world, and to see the passion. I mean, some of these people don't even come from democratic places, but they know that what they saw doesn't make any sense, and that it has to be wrong, and that it would be wrong anywhere. Exactly. So, I think it's really, really important for us to say, you know what, there's more than just what we saw. It's how we saw it and how we can make sure that the policies and the practices help us to take all of this to the next level. So I definitely, I have a lot of passion around this. I actually traveled the country and went to events, and like I said, I'm hope I'm on the list now so I can be invited and come. But and I met people who were doing their homework in McDonald's parking lot in their car. I know a woman who got her master's degree sitting in the McDonald's parking lot because they leave their Wi-Fi on. They don't advertise it, but they do. They leave their Wi-Fi on. A lot of places turn it off. And that is the difference between her having her master's and not. And then you see all these other people who, they had opportunities to start their own businesses. That's another thing that we don't talk about, that, the commerce that happens on the internet, and how I've met Black women who had everything from Herbalife to, they were selling everything from food to supplements to, makeup, you name it. And that's how they made their living. Right.
Well, Ms. Kim Keenan, we appreciate you. This is Kim Keenan, co-chairman of the Internet Innovation Alliance. She wrote an op-ed piece that is currently at rollingout.com, America's Digitally Powered Racial Awakening. We appreciate you coming on a seat at the table. You most definitely will be in contact, because we have this big conference coming up. I think that you will be a great asset to be able to talk and enlighten more of our guests about the broadband experience that we need to all have.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It's a pleasure meeting both of you. Bye.
You. Peace.
Bye.
See you soon.
Okay.
All right.
You got another guest coming on.
You do.
Mr. Xavier People. Xavier People created this cool app that I think that what it does is, if I'm not mistaken, it is a way of helping HBCUs during this pandemic and epidemic and trying times that we're unprecedented time that we're dealing with. Are you here with us yet, Xavier?
See him, I don't see him.
Yeah. So what do you think about broadband? How does that impact us? What do we need to do to make that happen, man?
I think broadband is a movement. Obviously, we believe it's more of a right. So it's critical that our community get connected. I mean, it is no possibility of staying competitive without broadband. What's going on, Xavier?
Hello, how you doing?
Hey, everybody watching Seat at the Table with Tigna Rand and our guest tonight, Xavier People, who has found a solution for all of us to be able to participate and support our HBCUs and make a difference while just adding to your new behavior. Xavier, why don't you pull us up on how you changing the world? I will change the world. HBC power. Both of us are from Morehouse, so we're with you, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you all for allowing me to come and be a guest on your show this evening. So do you want me to start from the top, tell you about the app?
Why not? You know, we got 27 more minutes. Let's get down.
All right, cool. So HBCU change. So my daytime job, I work for a firm by the name of Capital Group. And we are the largest active money manager in the world. And a byproduct of working at this firm, we manage some of the largest endowments and foundations of institutions of higher learning. And so I was just curious one day, I said, hey, how many HBCUs do we manage? Because HBCUs can benefit the most from the resources and the research that we provide these larger universities. How many HBCUs do we have? And the answer was 0. And so literally I got on a plane and I was flying all over the country just to do research on HBCUs and their endowments. And the research that I did, I found that the HBCUs endowments underperform greatly. A lot below other. Well, in terms of the way that the endowments are invested, a lot of times they don't perform as they should in up markets, and they perform worse in down markets. And so, again, went around the country just to kind of explore that and dig a little deeper. And when sitting down and talking to the schools, they say, hey, Xavier, this is all great information, and we appreciate the resources that you're and the research that you're bringing to the table, but we really want to solve for engaging our alumni in a meaningful way to consistently give back to the school. And so if you can figure that out, we can back into all this other stuff. And so I came home and I did a little research. And so I sent out a survey to 5,000 HBCU alum, and I asked, why don't you give back to your school? And why don't you give back to your school on a consistent basis?
What was the answer? What was the first answer you got?
The number one answer was, we don't give back to the school because we've never been asked, surprisingly. Followed closely by, we don't give back to the school because we don't feel that we can give back an amount that will have a significant impact on the school. And that's when the light bulb went off and I said, hey, I'm on the right track. And so with me being in the investment space, I don't know if you're familiar with Acorn.
Yes.
But Acorn.
And Noah, they talking about Acorns with Noah Kerner?
Well, Acorns is when you round up your change. And
the roundup where, yes, you do the, yes.
And you take that change and you invest it into the market. I said, what if I can create Acorn for HBCUs where you round up the change and you give that change to the HBCU of your choice? And so upon further research, I wanted to know, on average, if a person was given change to a cause or to their school, in this case, how much could they give back, give or take, in a given month? And if you connect both your debit card and your credit card to this app to give back, on average, depending, of course, it depends on the amount of transactions you do on a monthly basis.
Mhm.
On the low side, you can give $54. On the high side, $87 a month going back to the HBCU. So let's just use a school like Clark Atlanta. Clark Atlanta has 40,000 alumni. If 10,000 people were to sign up on this app, that's 540,000 a month, over $6 million a year going back to Clark Atlanta University off of change. That's a tremendous impact on the school. And then the end user is giving without even thinking about it. And so what we've created is not anything that's novel. It's novel in the sense that it solves for the many issues that HBCUs have when it comes to consistently giving your alumni to give back to the school.
Cool. Now, name of the app is HBCU Change.
That's correct.
You got a part of your initiative, your rollout initiative is a pretty steep one. Your goal is to raise $1 billion with a B,
Billion with a B,
for HBCUs in 5 years.
Absolutely. So think about it from this perspective. On the surface, it sounds like it's a huge goal because that $1 billion number, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about 103 accredited institutions. You have institutions in this country that have $7 billion, $10 billion, $20 billion in their endowment alone. And I'm talking about $1 billion for 103 schools.
So at this point, you have been able to, all HBCUs, accredited HBCUs have signed on and bought into this concept.
So currently right now we're rolling them out in phases and we're being intentional about that. So The first phase, we rolled out 6 schools, and that was Florida A&M University, Clark Atlanta University, Alabama State, Fort Valley State University, Benedict College, and Morris Brown. And our next phase, we're rolling out 20 schools. The reason why we're rolling out the schools in phases is because we want to give schools the opportunity to truly get their alumni base engaged. And if we rolled out all 103 schools at one time, then it kind of hurts the effectiveness of not only signing up the schools, but then getting their alumni engaged at one time. So we want to do it in phases and block it out and do 10s and 20 schools at a time so we can be effective in marketing to all alumni.
So the first phase of the rollout started last week, a couple of weeks ago?
Last week.
So how are you, or how is the school to your knowledge, based upon FAMU, Alabama State, Benedict, Clark Atlanta, Fort Valley, Morris Brown, how are they getting that word out? Is there any type of marketing behind that to market that through digital or any form of marketing advertising?
Great question. So we break up our marketing campaign into 3 phases. So we start off with a trust campaign. And what we do is we get a video from the president of each school announcing the partnership with HBCU Change and the school. From there, we do what we call an ambassador campaign. And that is we get alumni to submit us videos and talk about the importance of giving back to the school, but also the impact that rounding up and giving change back to the school will have on the institution as a whole. And then we overlay all of that with just social media and digital campaigns over and over again to make everybody aware and to get everybody to sign on and give back through HBCU Change.
So how easy? So once I download this app, all I have to do is put in my institution and all pertinent information, and everything's connected, ready to go.
It's rocking and rolling and it's ready to go. And so what we do is we round up change, but we don't take the money out of your account until the change totals $5.
A certain $5. Okay.
$5.
So what about that brother from Morehouse or that sister from Spelman or Prairie View A&M who want to, Houston Tillerson, who want to sign up right now? Can they do that, or do they have to wait?
Absolutely. You can sign up right now. We actually with both with Spelman, we're working with Morehouse School of Medicine, but Morehouse is on our list for probably our 3rd phase, which will probably kick off in October. And so, but right now, if you wanted to go on and sign up and start contributing to your school, you can go ahead and sign up and start contributing to your school.
Okay. So how well has it been received so far? Do you have any analytics to kind of see if the needle is moving or any?
The feedback has been overwhelming and phenomenal. The schools themselves, they love it because not only are we raising money for the schools, but I don't know if you know, but HBCUs don't have good data on their alumni and their supporters. And so another thing that we're doing for these schools is we're organizing the data for the schools. And so we've set up a dashboard for the schools where they have the name, the email addresses, as well as the contributions and the geographic locations of the individuals that are giving back to their institutions. This is phenomenal for the schools because let's just say, using Morehouse as an example, you had 200 brothers that lived in Omaha, Nebraska, right? Now Morehouse know that, hey, we can target these guys in Omaha, Nebraska. We can do an event in Omaha, Nebraska. And outside of the roundups that we're having on a monthly basis, we can do an event and raise even more money just by sheer knowing that we have 200 Morehouse brothers that live in Omaha, Nebraska. And so the schools are ecstatic about not only us raising the money for them, but the data and how we're organizing the data on their behalf.
Okay, sounds good. So what else? What is what is the name of your firm again? Is
HBCU Change.
Your full-time job? You say you work for
Capital Group.
Capital Group.
Yes.
How it has Capital Group invested any towards the HBCU Change campaign?
No, not yet. But what we're doing is what I will say is they're championing giving back to HBCUs, and so they're trying to figure out how they can get involved with this and campaign as well. Even bigger than that, because of the media attention that we have received, we've gotten a lot of calls from a lot of huge corporations trying to figure out, because these corporations, they want to give back, they just don't know how to give back. I know that sounds crazy, but
no, it doesn't sound crazy. That's really very true. I mean, based upon what we've all seen over the past 6 months,
yep,
from the epidemic,
yep,
and the pandemic,
yep,
there are a lot of organizations and corporations who want to give back, but don't know how, as you stated. And part of the reason why we have created a seat at the table is to really have that conversation with some of those individuals who are decision makers to put together a plan that shows how to do that. Because one of the biggest problems that we encounter in the Black media space is that some of these same corporations don't even look for Black, not just Rolling Out, but there are over 200 Black media outlets, be it print or digital, and most of the times they're overlooked. But yet we're their biggest consumers, but yet they kind of bundle us in with general market. But how do we have that conversation? So yes, you're correct. So it'll be great to have that conversation and put together some KPIs to figure out this is how you can invest in HBCU Change. This is how you can come back and see and put the numbers on the table, and they can see how valuable it is for being a part of Black institutions as well as the Black community.
So what we're doing is we're talking to corporations about doing matching programs. And so
okay, that's great.
What that does is that incentivizes the alumni bases to give back, because if we can get big corporations to come in and say, hey, whatever your institution gives back through rounding up change in a given year, we'll double it, then it's all hands on deck. Let us round up and give back as much as we can, so we can give. That's like giving 3 times my gift if I just give and round up on a monthly basis. And so we're working very closely with a lot of big corporations, and we hope to make a couple of big announcements pretty soon.
That's outstanding. So what's next for you, Xavier? How do you see you expanding the HBCU Change?
I think that the biggest thing for us now that we've gotten the word out and talking to individuals and like yourself, is to convert all of this notoriety into users. At the end of the day, we are all about getting as many users as possible to support HBCUs. And so just continuing to get the word out and converting that notoriety into users so these schools can get the support that they need, especially now during the pandemic, where HBCUs are hurting now more than ever before because their doors aren't open. See, a lot of people don't know that HBCUs make majority of their money on room and board and food services.
That's true.
Very similar to being in the hotel business, right? And if you don't have kids on campus, room and board, not eating, then that's a tremendous dent in that school's operating budget.
That's very true. Outside of your major institutions such as Howard, Morehouse, Spelman, Hampton, most schools don't receive large endowments. Most of the times those endowments probably, in most cases, don't exceed a couple of million. You know, I think Spelman got a 24 million not too long ago. That's, you know, that's unprecedented for HBCU. That is some of your Ivy Leagues, that's a drop in the bucket for an Ivy League school.
That's right.
They're looking at
year in and year out. That's easy.
That's easy dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But you're correct, and I think that at this point, our institutions now more than ever, we saw it. A lot of our blue chip athletes who were signed to go to D1 schools, they opted out and decided to go to HBCUs due to all of the situation that's occurring. So which a lot of people don't realize the value of a HBCU, and it offers great education that people think that because it's a Black institution, it doesn't do well, but they are just as good or better than any of the D1 universities and Ivy League schools.
Absolutely.
By far. And we can go down the list and rack and stack them from Fisk University to Howard to Texas Southern University, Tennessee State. The list goes on and on. You know, of course, everyone talks about Morehouse and Spelman, Howard and Hampton. But
I'm glad you brought that point up because, you know, although Morehouse, Howard, Hampton, they get a lot of donations and they need those donations. So, and they need more, right? But the schools that are truly on the fringe of closing, mid-size and small.
The small schools. It's the private schools.
Right.
It's the schools that belong to churches, because you got to figure that Morris Brown is a part of the AME AME Church. Bishop College in Dallas closed down because they did not have funding, which was a part of the AME Church. I think you got one in Augusta. That's Payne College is very close to the verge of closing down, which is an AME church. Clark before it was Clark College, it was a part of United Methodist Church. So most of these small schools are part of other institutions, and most of them are churches.
That's right.
You know, if a school becomes part of the state, they do get some state dollars.
That's right.
But the average Black institution is a private school.
Bingo. And so that's why, and our mission is for all 103 accredited institutions to become self-sustainable and not have to rely on government funding and sporadic donations.
Yes.
And that's what this is all about. You know, it's the old adage, if you give someone a fish, they can eat for a day, but if you teach them how to fish, they can eat for a lifetime. This right here is giving HBCUs a chance to eat for a lifetime.
And I commend you for doing that, because now more than ever, if this pandemic and this epidemic didn't do anything else, it should teach Black people in general, how we should be able to learn how to sustain our own people, because we do have quality in our communities that we have overlooked for so many years, from eateries to designers to institutions, but we're not using them because for some reason, we think going somewhere else is better.
And you know what? There's a statistic that I read that 41% of all Black businesses are expected to close.
That's right.
During this pandemic. And so, you know, my goal and my mission is to support Black institutions. So whether that's Black banks, that's Black businesses, Black schools, we need to support ourselves and sustain ourselves. We make enough money to do it, but we, like you say, our money goes to other places and then they benefit from it. And then our institutions, they hurt. And
Exactly.
so,
It's the little things that we can do, because there's one thing that I tell people, that one thing that we can, if you know of a Black-owned restaurant or a franchise, be it a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A, or if you purchase a gift card from that establishment that is a Black-owned establishment, let's say it's in Atlanta, and you send it to your family or someone in California, the credit goes back to the Black franchisee who you bought it from.
that's right.
So if you can't, so I tell that to people. So if you really want to support, try to go buy from a Black establishment. And even though it may not be a Black one in another market, once you give that card that was purchased, it still gives the credit back to that Black franchisee owner.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about. We have to be very intentional about supporting our own day in and day out.
Yeah. So I appreciate you, Xavier, for coming on. Tell us how people can download the app. How easy is it? What are some of the basic steps they need to do? And go down the list one more time of the schools that's already on board, and they can sign up for HBCU Change.
We're in all app stores, and that is the Apple App Store as well as the Google Android App Store. You can just go HBCU Change and download the app. Literally, it'll take you 2 minutes to load in your information, your email address, so forth and so on, and get everything downloaded and get started. So as easy as 1, 2, 3. We like to say our saying is, giving back has never been this easy. And so go back, download the app, and start giving today.
Mr. Xavier Peoples is the mastermind behind HBCU Change, a new app that is designed to help HBCU colleges have sustainable donations on a monthly basis. So the first phase, the goal is to raise $1 billion in 5 years.
Million with a B.
Million with a B.
Yeah.
And the first schools that's on the target is Florida A&M at Alabama State, Benedict College, Clark Atlanta, Fort Valley State, and Morris Brown colleges. So all from any one of these institutions who's listening, go download this app today, sign up for it, start letting your change work for you and support your institutions, because I know that you love your college. Likewise, for those that I did not mention, you can go download the app and do the same thing. So I'm challenging all my brothers from Morehouse to do that now, as well as my folk back home at Prairie View A&M, Houston Tillerson, Texas State University, and Tennessee State University. We appreciate you, Xavier.
All right, Xavier. See you at Ride.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
We got coming up next a phenomenal sister that I think that you will be talking to. You ready?
I'm ready, bro.
How ready are you?
Very ready.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it is. Good. Looking forward to Ride. So that's happening.
So what is Ride?
Rolling Out Innovation Digital Entertainment Conference. We've got some of the big. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Miss
We
Cora.
got some of the biggest, got some of the best people like Cora Masters Barry. I don't know who left the Masters out, but I did. So I didn't leave Masters Barry out. But she and Donna Brazil and Minya Moore, and Lee Daughtry are all coming to Ride. And it is a very powerful exchange of intergenerational conversation, powerful movement, powerful love, Black radicalism, like radicalize yourself today so that you love yourself. Don't let anybody take your Blackness away. Like do everything you can in your power to understand the power of our collective thinking, our collective understanding, our collective love. So
When does this take place?
September 25th and 26th.
Live in person, or is it going to be virtual?
I think it's virtual because I can't make it to Florida. It looks like somebody already back to DC. So I am just like, you know, when ballers come and all of a sudden we've got Miss Natalie Hopkinson.
Excuse me, no, that's Doctor. That's Dr. Natalie.
Why didn't y'all put Doctor on here? Hey, Doctor.
Hey, how you doing?
You know, anytime we can have a phenomenal conversation about nothing new under the sun. For all of you out there, this is the segment of a seated table called Nothing New Under the Sun. And obviously it is hosted by the one, the only, the beautiful, the dynamic, the BLACK of all who need to understand the movement shaker, the mentor maker, those who are there to share and pour into all of us, and all of us get to reciprocate and pass over this bridge that she is building as she continues to share intergenerational conversation and change. So welcome, ladies, and obviously to the host of Nothing New Under the Sun, Miss Cora Masters Barry and Dr. Natalie Hopkinson. Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm very happy to be here, but I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The hat.
The hat.
I've never seen the hat before. You gonna vamp a little bit and give me a story? I mean, what's going on with the hat?
You know, I was in Detroit maybe 2 years ago. You know, I like Coleman Youngstown. So they're very Black there. They're very strong. They believe. You know, they've had Black press. They got Black mayors. They got Black culture. They got Motown. They really have it. So the hat is nothing like the stories that you tell. But clearly it is part of me being a Black man and just seeing my grandfather wear one, knowing that you could be there. It's part of what I think I take away from my ancestors, just enjoying to adorn myself. And, you know, I'm in Chicago now, so it's a nice place to wear nice hats. So I'm a hat guy, just like my granddad's a hat guy, and he was a pastor. So that's my only story. Every time I go to the D, I go to Henry the Hatter and buy a hat. And,
well, that's a funny story. Because
yeah.
I actually have a Detroit hat story very quickly. You're right. I was going with Marion we went to Detroit, and he was speaking at someone's church, and the Saturday before we went out to get me a hat to go to church, which it may not appear, or it may appear, but I have an extremely large head. We went into the shop, and the lady was, "Oh yes, Mrs. Barry." And I said, and I told her, I said, I have a large head. So you have to give me one of those hats to stretch. So the other stuff is not going to work. So, oh no, we can fit you. We can fit you. So after about 40 hats that didn't fit, the guy looked over at me and said, you really have a little shade tree there, don't you? Marion just died. And I got so mad at him. I went and sat in the car. He thought that was so funny. So that's my Detroit hat story. Welcome to Nothing New Under the Sun. It's just your turn. I'm happy to be with my brother Sneak. By the way, your alum, Scott Bowden, told me to tell you hi.
Hey.
And, yeah. And, yeah, he said y'all went to Morehouse together.
Who is that now?
You and Scott Bowden.
No, I don't know Scott Bowden.
Okay, I'm telling you said that. I'd be so happy to tell him that.
Look. You know, I don't know Scott. Scott truly was the man on campus.
Oh, you knew of him?
No, I knew him.
Uh-huh.
You know, at Morehouse, there are only some guys that you actually know. They don't mention your names. If they don't know you, that just meant you weren't there. And Scott is there now, just like he is fully alive in DC, being who we expect him to be.
Yeah, he's definitely a peacock that struts.
But not, yeah, it's really about the mystique. You know, everybody says either you got the Morehouse mystique or you don't. Some guys got Morehouse. Some guys had the mystique. Scott got the mystique.
Scott's got everything. That's my lawyer and my friend. But I digress. I want to take this opportunity to introduce a sister that I think is just awesome, Dr. Natalie Hopkinson. She is an assistant professor of doctoral programs at Howard University. She teaches Department of Communication, Culture, and Media Studies. She's an award-winning essayist, published author, and a cultural scholar. She was a former staff writer and editor and critic for the Washington Post and The Root. She's a fellow appointee. When I say fellow, I should say sister appointee to the Mayor's Commission on Arts and Humanities. I tell you, she ain't nothing but the truth. So, you know, this show is about intergenerational, and it's about young people doing, you know, God's work, so to speak, for the culture, for the race, for our country, actually. And Munson always, well, who you gonna have on next? Who you gonna have on next? And I'm just, you know, he's got that always pushing me, but my brain operates contextually. That's how my brain operates, contextually. It doesn't operate in terms of personalities. It's like, what message am I, well, where else in the culture, in our world do we want to look? And so, you know, I met this young lady on the day that we were testifying for the nomination of being on the, I never met her before, never seen her before, actually. Heard of her, but didn't really know her. And we just clicked. But just like Tamika, we fought too. And I just, you know.
She fusses at me.
So Natalie, welcome.
I've been cussed out. We're gonna get into all of that, Miss Cora. But no, I feel like I've known her forever, and we've been on many hijinks together in the past few months working together on the Arts Commission.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. We have to watch that one. So Natalie, I want you to meet Mr. Munson Steve, and I want you to meet another bright, beautiful young woman that I'm sure is going to be in your world, in your Rolodex, so to speak. And I'm always so interested because she's so smart and she's well read and she does her homework. So I'm always curious, but her perspective on things is somewhere, you know, that doesn't necessarily always connect with mine, which is as it should be. So with that being said, I'm really anxious to hear from you, Natalie, what you think about what's going on right now in the country with the various protests, uprisings, political, that whole mishmash or something. You're a professor, what do you think?
I am so happy that it's happening. And, you know, I was talking to my mom about, you know, 2020 recently, and everybody's been talking bad about 2020, but we've decided that it really is about 2020 vision. It's about seeing things clearly. It's basically, we have an X-ray on our country where we're seeing some things that we didn't know was there. Well, some of us knew it was there, but everybody, the whole world is seeing a lot of the cancers that are in our society. And my hope is that we're finally getting to the root of them and that we're finally beginning to address them. And that is my hope.
Of all of the things that are going on, what aspect of it is particularly interesting to you that you're focused on? Because there's a lot of stuff going on right now.
Yeah, it's so much. So I know, like for me, you know, I spent most of my career as a journalist, and I've been like a working journalist off and on, you know, so I've never stopped being a journalist in addition to doing a lot of scholarly work. So I'm always looking at what's happening right now, but I'm also thinking about like the culture. Like I'm completely obsessed with archives and thinking about how our stories are preserved, not for today, but for 50 years from now, when our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, what are the story they're going to tell about this moment? That how are they going to understand this? And until now, I mean, I think I do think it gets progressively better, you know, but we just have so much work to do as far as, you know, decolonizing, you know, knowledge, decolonizing the way we understand the world, decolonizing media, you know, so what Rolling Out is doing is like super important, has been super important, you know, since, was it 1827 when the first Black press was created? I mean, all of these things are super important, but I'm also like, I think that we just have a lot of work to do. So I'm in the streets with my kids, you know, and they're sort of dragging me out, you know, seeing a lot of these things that are going on. But I have to kind of try to block some of it out. And some of that is the work that we're doing together. Cora is, you know, we've been doing a lot of archival work. I'm obsessed with that, and particularly obsessed with making sure that Black women's stories are told and that Black women take their rightful place at the center of many of these narratives. And so so we're actually going to be sitting down again on Friday because we're going to be doing another oral history. You know, Cora Barry and I are going to be doing oral history, and in preparation for that, what's amazing to me is that there's always Black women like Cora Masters Barry who they don't get all the shine. They're not necessarily the ones in the spotlight, but they're really the ones who make things happen. And so that's what I'm really interested in doing, is like telling those stories and making sure that we take our rightful place.
Well, you're right about the shine. And if it wasn't for this man right here, I still would not be doing this, because this is not, you know, I tell my story one-on-one, I tell it in a classroom, I don't tell it to the world. So this is not a space that I've ever aspired to, nor is it a space that I'm very comfortable in. But it's an opportunity to expose many of our people to people like yourself, and also to understand the value of bringing generations together. And in that respect, I think it's all very important. I said before that I met Natalie at the Arts Commission, where she was representing a cultural phenomenon in Washington, D.C. that many people know about, but not enough. And it's called, you know, go-go. It's an art form, it's a music form that's original and indigenous to Washington, D.C. And for some strange reason, maybe in some iterations, it hasn't really spread to any place else. It's just really been our thing. Go-go is just our thing. So Natalie and a group of other people, you know, Washington, D.C. is being gentrified like all the rest of the cities in the country, and our culture is being lost. And so she's a cultural warrior, you know, to preserve our history, to preserve our music, to preserve our way of life. And so her being on the commission, and then they worked very hard and they got the city to vote to make go-go the official music of Washington, D.C., like jazz is in New Orleans. So I'm very excited about that. But that's like a 40, 50, 60-year battle, you know, the great Chuck Brown. So I want you to talk a little bit about that battle and talk about, when you say don't mute D.C., that's like a parable of don't mute our culture, period, across the country. Right. But talk about what that looks like.
Yeah, so I started writing about go-go. I'm a newcomer to DC. I came to go to Howard University in the 90s, and I was an arts writer for the Washington Post when I realized that there was this amazing thing called go-go, and it was a big deal, huge industry, multi-million-dollar industry, people really passionate about it. And so I got totally obsessed with go-go, and I wrote a lot of long articles for the Washington Post about it. And then I did my PhD at the University of Maryland, where I studied go-go music. And then that became a book. About a year and a half ago, I was working with a go-go cultural activist named Ronald Moten. We were doing a lot of work around cultural preservation in the Chocolate City. We were noticing these gentrifiers there was a pattern of attacking Black businesses, Black cultural businesses, specifically restaurants, clubs. And then there was a business, this Metro PCS right off of U Street was being attacked.
And U Street, I have to interrupt because you're going to assume U Street is one of it's like 125th Street in Harlem. It's where Duke Ellington and all of the Black artists took place up and down U Street. It is being gentrified. I mean, for those of you, it's where the famous Ben's Chili Bowl is located. So it's like one of the last frontiers of our culture, although it's changing swiftly. So go on with the story.
Yeah, it really changed swiftly. And actually this particular part of U Street, Langston Hughes sang poems about it. the songs of 7th Street. He said he wanted to be able to write poems like the songs they sang on 7th Street. And so, you know, this is a very historically significant place, and that these gentrifiers were attacking them was completely outrageous. There was a Howard student created this hashtag. She's a poet. She created this hashtag called Don't Mute DC. That went viral. Ronald Moten and I did a petition on change.org, Don't Mute DC Go-Go Music and Culture. That got 80,000 signatures on this petition. Only 20,000 of them were from the DC area. They came from all over the world, 94 different countries. All these people really rallied around this culture. And then there were all these go-go protests in the streets, like really like thousands of people with go-go. And if you've ever lucky enough to be able to experience go-go, it is the blackest thing. You know, I know Detroit is black. I get that. But go-go is really black. Like it's all the drums, it's congas, all this layers of percussion. So like all these live bands were in the streets, thousands of people coming out to support. And that is when these white folks really knew that the Chocolate City is not anything in past tense. We are still here. We are still laying claim to the space. And, you know, all these other things that followed, like making go-go official. You know, I was appointed to the DC Arts Commission with Cora Masters Barry. And, you know, we are sort of like, I don't know if it's the last stand. I mean, I think one of the things I talk about a lot is that, you know, people talk about Chocolate City in past tense. And I think that's also very violent because we are still the largest ethnic group in DC, like by far. Like Black people are about 45% of the population. So to be people talking about us in past tense is really violent. And we need to sort of keep reminding people that, look, we're here. You know, maybe there's some trends that don't look good for us, but we're still here and we're still fighting to preserve our culture and our way of life and actually just our basic humanity, because that's really what you're talking about. Like our art is important, just like ballet and opera, just like the Smithsonian museums, all like it's just as important. And so, you know, part of what we finally gotten, I don't know if it's all these people and all those drums and the people of the streets, you know, and of course the people signing petitions have let the powers that be to understand that. And so we've been, I think, moving. We still have a lot of work to do, particularly on the Arts Commission, which that probably needs to have its own show. But I think we're on a good trajectory. We're not having the same, having to defend our culture in the same way that we've had in the past.
I think when we're preserving our culture, we also are preserving our economics, because a lot of work and a lot of money was made in that culture. When you deny people their culture, you deny them the access to continue to take care of their lives and their families. I met your mother.
Yeah.
And that's all I have to say. I met your mother. So
they are two.
I don't have to ask the question, who mentored you, because yes. I met your mother, and I'm sure she probably was a serial mentor, but she's a dynamic lady, and it would take somebody like that to produce somebody like you. But as I watch what you guys are doing in the streets with the go-go, and I get a little concerned because I don't really see that next generation. And so I wonder how important that is in your life in terms of passing on, teaching and learning from the next generation.
Well, first of all, Cora and I became such fast friends that my mom was like, "What, have you replaced me?" Because I was talking to Cora. I was talking to Cora a lot. But I really appreciate it because, the one thing I'm always fussing at the baby boomers, about is that I feel like we don't get a lot of the mentorship. There isn't a lot of baton passing. People just hold on to the baton until, the bitter end, and nobody learns anything. And there's no passing on of, the knowledge, cultural knowledge, the wisdom and all of that. So that's what I really appreciate about our relationship. And it's been so intense, but I've learned so much. I learn something every day. I've also learned a lot from my mom. So my parents are from Guyana, South America originally. I was born in Canada. My mother is, I think they would get along very well. She also was very, my mother is a very, I don't know, self-assured, entitled. Like she expects the world to give her stuff, and you know what they do? Like people nobody messes with my mother. People fall in line. And, you know, she sort of passed on that sense of entitlement to me. And Lord knows you need it when you're on the DC Arts Commission, because you're really talking about a group of people. Like I have never met people more entitled and more, I guess, yeah, just entitled and sort of possessive, as if they get to say what art is and there's no other definitions and that's it. Like you really have to have a strong sense of yourself to be able to go into some of these cultural battles, to be able to, in the realm of culture, you know, you try to make arguments that conga drummers are as important as opera singers. Like this is like, these are things like, and you know, and this is something that I've been doing for a long time. So like I've been on panels where people have actually laughed at me. Who studies go-go music? And I'm like, you know what? If these people were like, had tutus, you know, and were dancing, following across, nobody would ever ask that question. But so you really have to have a very strong sense of who you are, like your sense of identity, sense of history, in order to go into these cultural arenas, because all they do is police them and say, you don't belong here. You know, your culture isn't even what you're doing is not even art. Like they don't even consider it art. Like they call go-go noise. You know, they don't even consider it art, you know, which is again absurd. But it's sort of like this gaslighting that you get living in this country. Like people are constantly telling you that, you know, the sky is green when the sky is clearly blue. And you have, you know, and so that's why I'm so happy to have like a comrade on the commission with me, because.
But our styles, like, I have to interrupt you
the
there.
Sanity check.
Our styles are very different. And anybody who's watching me or you, Munson, would think that I'm pretty direct and pretty upfront. But compared to her,
oh, come on.
I'm Rosa Parks.
Oh, no, come on.
I'm trying to tell you that I'm like trying to keep her from throwing Molotov cocktails. And she goes in so hard, and I'm like, you need to calm down. We have to be patient. I mean, it's not, it's like a
I cannot even believe she said
Sometimes
that.
I have to hold the phone away from my ear.
I'm gonna have to run the tape. I'm gonna have to run the tape on these, because actually, literally, I don't know what the ladies who lunch had to talk about before Cora Masters Barry joined, you know, came on the scene, because she's giving them something to talk about like every week. And I'm mild. I'm Canadian. I'm nice. I'm Canadian. That's my style. But I'm not gonna do but I will not tolerate the gaslighting though. And that's just what I'm not doing. Like you're not gonna I mean, there's just certain things that just are not gonna happen, you know, because like I know too much. Like this is stuff that I've studied my whole life, right? I've been steeped in the Black arts tradition. My mother worked at the Madam C.J. Walker Urban Life Center in Indianapolis. You know, we lived in Indianapolis when I was a kid. She was the business director there. I grew up doing Black dance, Black art, Black theater, you know, then I went to Howard. So like, I've been steeped in this. And so there's literally nothing you can tell me that would make me believe that, again, the sky is green. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but here's the point. So I can just make this very clear. Someone asked me after I'd been on the commission for about 2 months with the same kind of intense passion and even more. And they were like, what, how, this doesn't fit. Why are you getting all caught up in the Arts Commission? And I thought, this is why they get away with it. This is why they can get 40 million of our taxpayer dollars and give it to anybody they want to give it to, because we don't see my whole presence there. The first interview I did with you, Munson, we talked about racism, and I said racism is from pillar to post. It's not just in the streets. It's not just all these big issues. It's every system that we have in this government. And this is a classic model for that. But at the end of it, it's about money.
Yeah.
It's about giving millions of dollars to people who deserve it, who look like us, who are as good or better artists. It's about redistribution of wealth. So in order to get to that, you have to go through something. And so I pushed to get where we need to go. I just want to open up the process and give a whole bunch of Black people some money that they've been needing to get for many, many years. And you have to go through something to do that. You can't just throw a Molotov cocktail in it and blow up the whole thing before we even get started, which is what she advocated. But
well,
at the end of
you
the
know,
day,
what I told them honestly, and this is what I've told people, is that, you know, the difference between me and Cora is that so honestly, I believe that I'm milder than Cora is. I think that's just a fact. We're gonna run the tape on that. But what I have said is that the difference between me and Cora is that Cora believes that the system can reform itself. She believes that we could, you know, and I believe, I'm willing to try her side, but I actually believe that people just need to get in the streets and people need to file some lawsuits. And, you know, and that's really the only way that things are actually going to change, because the policing and it's sort of like, and the thing around the culture is so difficult because it's not like in your face, like, okay, this is the Black grant and then here's the white grant and you can't have it. It's much more pernicious, right? It's in all the different rules and that people don't question them. Like, why do you owe some parking tickets? Can you not get a grant? Why do you have to share your arrest record? What does that have to do with, like, you know, singing a song or doing a dance? You know, like, these are the sort of like basic things that people don't question, or people, I guess, maybe don't have, I don't know, people just don't question. And I just don't have problem doing that. And so we'll see where we get.
well, the bottom line is, as my husband used to always say, it's about economics. It always has been, always will be. And if you don't see the economic aspect of the situation, you're wasting your time. But once we get past that, because that situation is an ongoing story with a hopefully hopeful, more empowering end, but it's a microcosm of what this country is about on every different level. One of the reasons I really
Cora, can I interrupt and ask you this? Because this is what I was thinking about. Maybe we'll talk about this on Friday. How much has being on the boxing commission prepared you for being on the arts commission?
Well, what prepared me for being on the boxing commission, and by the way, I was the first woman boxing commissioner in the country. I don't know if anybody knows about that or if anybody cares. But they asked that question. They said, what prepares you to be on the boxing commission? And I said, I'm in politics. That's a blood sport. So being in politics prepares me to be on any commission in the story.
Well, I've never been in politics, so I've learned. That's why I'm learning. I'm just talking. I'm talking and I'm learning as much as I can, because I don't really have a lot of patience for this. I don't really understand it. It doesn't make any sense. A lot of the stuff doesn't make any sense to me. But here we are. But, you know, to get back to the economics piece, I mean, that's really why GoGo is so powerful in DC, is that, okay, it's this amazing cultural forum, it's music and all that, but it's also a business. You know, this is comprised, it was a multi-million-dollar business. You know, these are people who've been locked out of, you know, many cases, you know, DC is also the capital of mass incarceration, you know, so you have people who've been locked out of the labor force who have created their own industry, you know, and it's something that's really powerful. And there's really nothing like it anywhere else. You know, it's really unique.
Well, moving away from the arts, because I think people get the point, is that it's all the same stuff. That's all, you know, people, just to stay on the topic a little bit, I guess you would say my business that I make money off of is tennis. Nobody ever really talks about it. It's literally tennis. And when people look at me and they say, tennis, I said, see, when you think about tennis, you think I'm sitting somewhere in the sky boxes and doing all that, and that's what tennis is. I said, it's the most racist place in the world, and I'm on the battlefield fighting with them white folks at the United States Tennis Association, who does everything they can to make all the money they can off Black people like Venus and Serena, and give as little money as they possibly can to all the programs around the country that Venus and Serena came out of. So wherever I am, there's a battle to be fought, because the issue of equity and inclusion and all of that, that's everywhere. So it's just like there's no rest for the weary. That's why I told you, Marcia, I want to get on the porch and just rock for a while.
Not
But
even close. We don't need you rocking right now. We need you rocking in rooms, rocking that knowledge across generations. I think that when you think about what you've done, when you share those stories, then everybody gets to not be punch drunk, but understand that it is a blood sport. And I think that when you go to DC, and you can't just say go to DC, because I think that's the fallacy. I think you got to say, it's a foul when you repeat something like, the city's not a chocolate city still. And we've got to correct our own narrative. That's and then the other thing is controlling our cultural narrative. So when you sit there and you say, she seems more difficult, well, she is unafraid. And I think the other thing is when you go to Howard, you're going to be Black. You're not going to sit there and say, you know what? Maybe the last person you met really wasn't Black. They weren't steeped in it.
Right.
They liked y'all so much that they wanted to be special, but they didn't want to include all the babies that you're not including with these rules and regulations. I think those are the questions that, when you think about why would you write a book? So that our children would not miss their heritage, because it needs to be steeped in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you teach? Why do you teach? Lots of other occupations. Why do you teach?
Well, you asking me or Natalie? I will tell them. I'm going to ask her because she's doing it now. But I taught for 20 years, and when I married Marion and he came back as mayor, I mean, I loved it, and the reason I loved it is because I was so good at it, and the kids didn't just learn, but it changed their lives. I was a political science professor, and I milked that for every angle it could be, on so many different levels. And then I said, I'm gonna continue to teach. And so I'm teaching. The next thing I know, I'm reading the Washington Post, and my lectures, and that happened to be one of the lectures where I was talking about Farrakhan and the Jews concerning the media and all of that. Anyway, it was all in the Washington Post. And then I realized they were having people who were enrolling undercover in my classes. And so that went on for a while. And then they started putting a lot of pressure on the university. That's got really ugly. So I said, well, I'm going to take a leave of absence because I can't teach if I can't teach. If I can't say the things I want to say and call people the names I want to call them, but I was worried about my husband's job being in jeopardy because I'm in the classroom saying, white folks own the media, then I'm not doing myself as a student. So I went to the dean to do the leave of absence, and I actually had to go 3 times. The first 2 times I had to go in the hall and cry. I was so hurt. Not because I was going to miss it, but because I knew those students were losing something in me. So that, to me, that was just my job. And so I just found another way to teach young people, maybe younger, but I'm over there radicalizing them. And I've never taught doctoral students. So tell us about why you teach that, Natalie.
Yeah, so I teach in the Department of Communication, Culture, and Media Studies at Howard. So it is a PhD program, and I find it extremely rewarding because I'm training people, mostly Black people, to go into the professoriate. This is, to be professors is literally a job created for white men. And, I guess all I get to do every day is to prepare people to enter into that space with their cultural knowledge of themselves, with the perspective. And I always apologize, well, not really, to my students, because I make them read twice as much as what they read in other programs, because they're going to know what the white people know, and they're going to know what we need to know. So they're really like bicultural. They're rooted, they're steeped in their own identity. It's from, I always say going to Howard, going to HBCU, it's like, it's what I imagine what being a white man is, where everything is in your image, everything is understood through your lens. And it's really powerful to be able to do that and to think about like that amplifying effect that has, so there's more professors, then they're teaching more students, and the whole chain of radicalization is happening, over and over again. And then I also just really like in the PhD program, like I'm working with students for like many years. So we're starting with an idea. We're sort of, thinking through how's the best to sort of like explore this idea. And then, it's really kind of a privilege to sit here and sit with this work. I did some of that sort of stuff when I was a journalist, but I find when you're a journalist, you have to respond to the markets too much. You got to think about what's going to sell, what are, you know, what's happening with the eyeballs, all of that. You know, with the in the academy, you don't care about any of that. You're just really talking about, you know, what do I think is the most important way for me to think for me to explore for the next X number of years. And so I think it's really rewarding in that way.
But you know, Natalie is not just a professor, but she's also beyond go-go. She is a community activist. There's a public-private school in Washington, D.C. named Benjamin Banneker. Has always been for the best and the brightest. And when we start gentrifying in this city, a certain population wanted to take that school and turn it into a middle school or do something special with it. And they were about to make it happen. And then these people went on a tweet storm, and she mobilized the community, and they saved that school for our kids and our people. So, you know, the cultural fights are not just, you know, with the go-go. And she has other in the street kind of things and affiliations. I think the most important thing we can do for younger people is to make sure, like you just said, that their heads are where it's supposed to be. They take their heads everywhere they go. They need context, they need understanding, and then it stays with them. And I have seen so many young women and women that I've admired so much. And I look at young people like yourself and Tamika, and I wonder, who is it that you really admire? Or if I asked you or called a name, I'd like you to give me a sentence on certain people. I just want to see what your perspective is. And we'll start with the easy one, Shirley Chisholm.
I like Shirley. She's right behind you.
Yeah, that's true, isn't she? I keep forgetting that. That's my set.
Yeah, I like her. She's always there.
Where did Natalie go?
I think she got frozen, probably a little Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Little Wi-Fi, but I like Shirley. I think when you think about all those young ladies, Shirley clearly, and you know, since you started talking about her, I think more people are looking back. More women are mentioning her name. I think as you said her name, it has created an increased swirl. I noticed even on our show, one of the young ladies on the morning show started talking about Shirley Chisholm. I'm like, where'd you get that from? And she said she was watching the show and actually did some research. So I think we've got to say the names of our Stokely Carmichael. You've got to say the names of Marion Barry. So individuals don't imagine that they don't have and haven't had elders that have paved the way, that have made it so that we can actually be steeped and proud and strong. Because, you know, you cannot literally be in this for anything good. And I'm saying good all the way down to where our children will, they'll believe in themselves. Because literally, if not, they're always working to remove dignity. It is not new. When we got here, they want to take our dignity, and it is still a part of the system.
Oh no, that's how you defeat a person. You take their self-worth. And then once you take their self-worth, you can do what you want with them. So I agree with that. And Shirley Chisholm, I think she's worth studying, because what I never am able to get across to people. I might say it, and maybe they're getting it, maybe they're not. The reason I think she's so special is because she did major things with no support. I mean, I don't think everybody has a constituency now. They have a support group, they have mentors, when you are the only Black woman in Congress, and the men that you work with, and sorry for all of their, family members that have to hear this, but none of them liked her, and they didn't treat her well. It was a tough sign of the times, not to excuse it, but to explain it. That and white women and Black women weren't too far behind to be able to go through all of that and do what she did. She's a superhero. But a lot of people just see her as a person who ran for president and sort of had a little list and a little quick wit and blah, blah, blah. But when they dig, they find out, wow. So I always put her on the list. The other person I would bring out of Serena Williams. I'll give you Serena Williams since you just came back up on Natalie. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Sorry about that.
That's
I
okay.
know that is a little bit third world over here sometimes.
You're not alone. I mean, if you haven't
We
been
just going bringing up names. We're talking about.
yeah, we're talking about superheroes and black sheroes, and obviously Serena Williams was one of those. So what are your thoughts on female? I was talking about Shirley Chisholm because she has her hidden right there behind her, but she was asking about Serena Williams culturally. What's your thoughts?
Oh, so I don't know if you can see the picture right behind me is this side. That's my brother. He played tennis. So I also grew up, playing a lot of tennis. Michael Hopkinson. He actually used to practice with the Williams sisters. He was on the pro tour. He had left college. He played University of Kentucky tennis and then went on the pro tour for a while. And so he was a sparring partner with them for a period of time. So I knew Mr. Williams when I was in high school, when I was graduating high school in Florida. So the Williams sister, that actually, she lived the dream. That was my dad's dream, was to have all of his children become tennis stars. And to watch those two, I mean, they are absolutely superheroes. And the way that you look at, and not just like the way they've dominated the court, is the way that they're so culturally, they're just so, from the beads to like the crip walk dancing, to her, Serena's in the video, like they're part of popular culture, and they have never walked away from their blackness, in ways that, let's face it. A lot of tennis players walk away because it's so alienated when you're in those situations. And so they're absolutely my sheroes. And it makes me so happy to see them, dominating the sport and really claiming their space in the middle of that culture.
That is a very long sentence. I said a quick sentence when I brought up a name. Now we got the history. Now
you can't ask the professor to do a short sentence.
Oh my God. I see right now, this is going to be a wrestling match. I need you to give me a direct answer. So I'm going to try Tamika Mallory. What do you think about her in 30 words or less?
Badass. My cousin, I think I told you, I have a cousin in London who sent me a clip of her, of her speech in Minneapolis. Like, she's had global impact. She has become an icon. And I also remember her speech during the Women's March as well. She's such a powerful voice, and so young. And she's amazing. That was long too, sorry.
Oh, it could have been longer. So Kamala Harris, Munson.
Kamala Harris, I love her. Oh, go ahead, Munson, please. I'd like to.
I can go after you, Dr. Hopkins.
No, I want to hear you.
I would say victory. She represents victory for us. I think she is an example of victory. She is an example of us being victorious about making a demand and it being heard. So I don't want anybody to imagine that it is important to go out and vote.
Natalie?
So I actually just was listening to a podcast of these Black women scholars who had some things to say about Kamala. And she is, I think people have complicated feelings about her. But honestly, I just feel like Biden could have chosen a chair and I would still be voting for him, so it's like, but instead he's got her, and I think she's wonderful. I think she's really complicated. And I think she's really gifted politician. I think if people are going to enjoy, seeing her in power, if we get that opportunity.
When we get that opportunity. We claiming victory over all doubts right now. We want every single person believing that this is what we need to happen. If we're going to survive, every single person that speaks her name, from now till after election day, after you voted and taken somebody with you, we've got to be very bold about our confidence. I mean, I'm saying with most of my friends, when they start weaving and start talking crazy, I'm like, you know what? It's life or death. So if it's life or death, which one? It's like, I don't even want any energy. All of our intellectual power has to be at win. And
oh well, I have had some very, and I think I've talked offline with you, Martin, about it. I've had some very exhausting conversations with younger people about this election. And conversations, like you said, should not even be taking place right now. I mean, this is war. I mean, that's all this is. So when you call me, I really made me. I was in Florida heading one place. I made the wrong turn. Went 10 miles before I realized how far I was going in the wrong direction, because I was on Bluetooth, and these young people with a little power was giving me all of these issues. What the Democrats not doing, what Biden's not doing, what Kamala needs to say, how they need to respond to this and that. So as I finally made a U-turn heading back where I was supposed to go, when they finished, I didn't say anything, and then they said, "Are you there?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "We just all gonna die. We're all gonna die." I got really quiet. That's how I feel. If this is you, I said, we're just all gonna die. So,
well, I think the thing
if this is prevalent, if this is real, and we end up with this situation, that's not a joke. I've told people, if you're a protester, you have to go get a job now. If he wins again, you're going to have to get your resumes out, because protesting will be illegal. They will shoot you down. Life will change as we have ever known it. It's that serious on so many different levels. You grapple with where to even focus on, because it's everything. It's just life or death. That's all it is. And for us to be wallowing, not any disrespect for anybody's pain, and I know all the stories. I mean, I don't denigrate the stories. I know they're real. I know people don't see the connection, and nobody's ever done anything. I mean, I get all of that, but this is so much deeper than whatever you're feeling right now, whatever your problems are right now, multiply them by 1,000,000. You might even be around to tell the story. There are thousands of people who are dead today that didn't need to be dead today, because this man made a calculated decision of how he was going to deal with this, especially when he understood that we were catching it better than anybody else. So it's life or death. And so I don't have much patience anymore to have a conversation about this election, other than how many people are you going to get to the polls? Let's do some early voting. You want to do some strategy around the bottom line, I'm fine, but nothing else.
I agree with that so much. And I just think that some people need to sit in their poli-sci 101 class, because the vote is just a small piece of what your duty as a citizen is. If you want Kamala to abolish the police, don't think the vote gets you there. Like, whatever you want to do, nothing happens without you pushing for it. Right. And so it's like I think people just think that you vote and then you've done your job, and then people are supposed to be like, no, they need to be continually put pressure. So that's one of the things that I've learned personally, just from the last year and a half, in some of the work we've been doing around Don't Mute DC, is that what we've heard from a lot of politicians actually was that, thank you. They're like, we really, like, all they hear, like, when all you're hearing is entitled white people, they're the only ones making a demand, then that's all you can really, that's the only thing you can concede, but so it's part of it is like, understanding what your power and what your responsibility as a citizen, and that goes beyond the vote, and stop complaining about it. As you said, start calling people, what are we doing? And that's my main thing with Trump, has been driving me crazy, like, especially on Twitter, which I, normally I love, but like, stop getting in your feelings. We know who he is. Why are you surprised at anything he does? Like, let me know what corner to meet you at, so we can do something about this. Like, you get to some point, you're like, stop crying.
What you are basically you're in classroom. What the people that I'm talking about, the people on the street, that was what you just said, they're so far beyond that in how they think about this election. They don't even discuss Trump. They discuss stuff that I don't want to get into here. I don't, there's no way to describe the level of discussion out here that could easily torpedo this election for us.
Well, it did the last time. So we did studies in my department. We did studies of Black Lives Matter on Twitter in 2016 in the run up to 2016 election. And it absolutely, the fact that the Black Lives Matter were targeting Democrats, they were so busy trying to take Hillary Clinton down that they were leaving him untouched, right? They should have been roughing him up. But instead, like there was so much internecine warfare. And then when really you have to apply pressure on everything. And also just because Trump won and he's not your candidate, doesn't mean that you can't keep putting pressure on him as the head of state, And so like what I'm concerned about right now is that there will be a replay of that, where that's when he starts talking about, that's why he's so obsessed with Portland, because it's changing the subject, right? Like, let's look over there. Things are out of control. I'm the only one who can maintain, control over these cities because these Democrats don't know how to lead, like he's changing the narrative, flipping the script, and everybody's just sitting there watching and helping him do it by fixating on what Kamala said, 10 years ago or whatever. Like everybody just needs to focus.
How's it going in Chicago, Munson?
Chicago is gonna vote strong and proud. I think there's no love here for anything else. I think the conversation, though, for all of us is just how to have more resolve. Like, let's just resolve to move through those doors. I think when you think about, and Dr. Hopkins, I think when you think about the fact that you're literally saying to someone, when you have a PhD, you have you're going to get $150,000 starting salary. And there are many universities that need a salary or an accredited, a real PhD. There's a need for what you're giving. Our community is not going to have those opportunities in these universities. You talk about keeping a movement alive. The lack of us and our resolve for really pushing forward is needed. We cannot be imagining another state. This has already been a crazy state. So I think the resolve that we have to have, and even just you teaching, that is a huge effort, like shaping minds for years. That's good. That's what this conversation's about. How do we shape and continue to shape the spirit of our culture? There's a lot of universities you could do that. But when you're at Howard, you're pouring into something special.
Well, and I would argue that you're doing the same thing, Munson. We're in the same business of educating people, of empowering people, giving people a voice. And, I think the more that we mix the idea of knowledge and action, like that's a thing. And that's why I'm at HBCU and why I'm happy at HBCU. This is part of what our mission is. We are not just about creating PhDs and, people go off in the tower and write, these things that only for like 5 people to be able to read. We are really about transforming society and, which of course it starts with people's individual decolonizing their minds, but it has a amplifying effect, when you're an educator as well. And then, oh my goodness. And then once you start linking up with some activists, which I've done in the last year, linking up with activists, linking up with artists, you can cause all kinds of trouble, all kinds of disruptions.
Yeah, but Howard there's a huge expectation though. When you say DC and you say Marion Barry, there's a very different expectation because everybody knows that at that point, Black is a priority. It's not an option. When you sit back and you see the example of a phenomenal Black mayor create a plaza where there wasn't one. And all of a sudden the art, just like what you're saying, arcs that idea. And it says across the world, our power matters. And it was just like in a moment. And iconically, DC had a Black Lives. Now everybody else replicates.
Everybody else has one now.
But now
I saw they have one in Indiana.
Right. What I'm just saying.
Where?
Indiana has it on Indiana Avenue in front of the Madam C.J. Walker Urban Life Center where my mom worked for years. Indiana, the home of the KKK. They have a Black Lives Matter mural too.
Right. But that's my example of why DC is a huge area. You know, when you think about the Black bourgeoisie and the level of thought and the writers and the artists and the culture, and then you on top of that, and obviously Miss Masters Barry, it's a special city. It's not the average city, just like Chicago is a real city.
That's right.
They are definitely saying, say it loud, we black and we proud. It's Southside. You know what's in. When you say Southeast DC, you know what you're talking about. You know where that is. And we want to keep those things. We want to preserve that. It's not just Howard University, it's Howard University Medical School. So they're producing healers. And it's an entire experience. It's the radio station. There are a lot of places, but it's not an average Black college. It's not an average HBCU. You birth expectations for Blackness and boldness. That's a very different location and locale. It's not a small rural city where it's not impacting the entire world.
No, and I have to say though, you know, when I came to Howard in 1994, I had never lived in an all-Black community. I had never been in an all-Black school. And to go to Howard was one thing, which was sort of blew my mind. But then to step outside and you got the Black mayor, you have the Black first lady, you got the Black police chief, you got the Black doctors, you got the Black all Black everything. Like I was like, I am never leaving. I will stay here. But then you know what? The white people followed me here. That's the whole irony of my whole life is that, you know, I got myself good and comfortable, you know, and then the game changed again. So, but I just think these are all things that are worth putting your boxing gloves on for. And that's, you know, people have started forgetting what our power is, you know, and I think that's part of like when we're talking about generational connection, that's why I really feel glad to be connected with Cora, because I feel that, you know, I feel that power, that entitlement. Like when Cora Masters Barry walks in a room, watch out. Watch out, you know. So I love that. I'm just sort of soaking that up, and I wish everybody had the you know, the opportunity to you know, to sort of experience that.
Well, I grew up in California, enough said. So when I went off to college, I visited here right after I graduated. On my way to Syracuse, I was so fascinated. I called back home and I told my mother, I'm moving to Washington, D.C. There's Black people as far as the eye could see. And they stand on the corner and they dance to music that they're holding up. I mean, I didn't understand a thing they were saying, but I was like so happy because I had just spent my last year up in Berkeley working on my master's degree, and I had enough. You know, they were up there tear gassing and all that. So I wanted to finish my master's degree at Howard. So I came here. And, you know, but I knew this was a special city. But I started learning about Washington, D.C. because my major in undergraduate school was sociology. So I studied in E. Franklin Frazier and Nathan Hare, and the Black bourgeoisie. And so I learned about Washington, D.C. And then when I went to Howard, I learned about Howard. And those were two very different entities. And that's what a lot of people don't know.
Yep.
Washington, D.C., as Marion would describe it, was a slow, sort of sleepy town. You got your status by being a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, or a government worker. I never even knew what a GS, Mom, my GS rating, what is a GS? So there was a whole mentality of people in D.C. that was very different than in Howard University. A lot of people thought, well, D.C. is radical because Howard University, they saw Howard. No. It got radical when Marion showed up in his dashiki and turned it over, but no. So yeah, the culture here is not ordinary. It's not like being, no disrespect, like being from Cleveland or being from Albany. It's really unique. I mean, yeah, it's the capital of the world, but then there's that part of it that is, this city is so political. Everything in the city is political, everything. And so.
And the level of discourse is very high. Like you'll have policy, I've had policy, conversations with all kinds of people. Everybody knows what the latest thing is going on. And it's very, it's a really special place. But it is changing a lot. E. Franklin Frazier, his house is actually around the corner from where he lived is right around the corner from where I am. My neighborhood, I live within walking distance from Howard. And I just can remember the last graduation we had, I had my regalia on because we couldn't get back in the building. And so I remember walking back home and I did not see one Black person the whole walk home, and it was right around Howard's campus. And it was just like, whoa, this is really different. This is really changing. And so part of the hope, maybe a silver lining is with, a lot of these businesses that have been devastated by COVID, they're not coming back. They're around U Street. Oh, they packed those are moving trucks, furniture is gone. They're not coming back. And so it's almost like the riots again, really, because actually that's what it looked like, after the George Floyd, all the boarded up, I remember, I run in my neighborhood and I remember running down the whole, I intentionally ran by the whole 16th Street, 14th Street corridor, U Street. Those are all the places that got devastated. 68, they're back devastated again. So, there is an opportunity again, for us to be part of rebuilding. And I'm hoping that we get, that we kind of get ourselves organized so that we can be part of the recovery.
Well, U Street was known as the Black Broadway. And so then they were taken over. So most of these businesses she's making reference to are gentrifying businesses.
Yeah.
So I can name at least 5 Black restaurants that I used to go to. And for those who are watching from other places, that's where the Howard Theater is, also right off U Street. So it's a lot of culture, a lot of history here. I'm very fortunate to have come here to further my education.
And the one thing I wanted with Juneteenth, and I'm going to ask you about that again on Friday. The other thing is so Marion Barry Plaza is going to be, the Marion Barry building is going up at downtown. And there was a statue of a Confederate statue that went down on Juneteenth. And I remember calling Cora that day and she was just like, oh, they're just clearing the space so that Marion can come in, because he's literally right where the Black Lives Matter protesters pulled down this Confederate statue. This is literally where the Marion Barry building is going up. So she was like, yes, they're just wanting to get rid of him so that, Marion can be there in peace.
Well, so.
Too long anyhow.
Huh?
The Confederate guy stayed too long anyhow.
He did. Well, the thing is, I didn't even know.
Eleanor had been trying to get him removed through legislation because that little piece of park, really the building is there. It's the biggest municipal building in the city, and they're naming it the Marion Barry Junior Building. But right across the street, a little patch of, Washington, D.C. is a local and federal city. So in the middle of anywhere, it could be federal land. Like where I live, I live mostly surrounded by woods. To my right is DC government. In front of me is federal government. So it's all over the city. And so you don't have jurisdiction. So with her efforts of trying to get it removed, legally, the protesters took it down and everybody's happy.
And they tagged it and then they burned it and it just went down. It was on live TV. Yeah. That bad boy went right down. And that was a perfect end to Juneteenth.
Yeah. So I'm so glad to be able to spend this time with you. This has been, I think very, very interesting because we don't talk about our culture enough. We're so busy talking about hard issues, which we should be, but to preserve the culture really is to preserve everything else. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your friendship. And would you visit us again? And so that's it for There's Nothing New Under the Sun. It's just your turn. Thank you.
Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Definitely thanks to Cora Masters Barry, and of course the illustrious Dr. Natalie Hopkinson for all you do, for all you pour into, and for just sharing the intergenerational communications and how mentoring goes both ways and allows each of us to share how we can grow and still stay Black. You do not have to be in the streets, but you do have to stay in the struggle. I'm Munson Steed. This is Cora Barry Masters Barry, and of course, Dr. Natalie Hopkinson. Love you both. Talk to you soon, and peace. We'll see you next time here on Nothing New Under the Sun.